Heather, only 22 years old, had recently begun her college journey while settling into her job. Life felt brimming with promise. Heather's infectious smile and laughter, along with her constant chatter, filled the air, radiating warmth and energy that uplifted everyone around her. Yet, everything changed on January 7, 2015, when Linda failed to show up for work. Her lifeless body was discovered in her apartment, partially unclothed. Who had the right to take Linda's life? Detectives faced a challenging investigation, as Heather had no known enemies, and the motive behind the crime remained unclear. However, one small detail proved crucial. Linda's death could have remained unsolved, and the perpetrator unpunished if not for this detail. It was revealed through the most crucial conversation of the investigation. The only way your bloody fingerprint got there is if your hands were bloody and had touched her. You were raping her. On a typical morning at the real estate agency in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, on August 7, 2015, Mary arrived at work and began her usual tasks. Heather, her friend and colleague, was running late, a common occurrence. When Kelsey's calls to wake Heather went unanswered, she decided to check on her at her apartment. Their apartments were in the same complex. Finding the front door unlocked, Kelsey entered and discovered Heather lying on her bed, seemingly asleep. Assuming Heather had a wild night, Kelsey attempted to rouse her, but there was no response. It was then that she noticed Heather's foot was cold. Realizing the horror of the situation, Kelsey called 911. Emergency services arrived, and Detective Robert was among the first on the scene. Heather was found partially undressed, with signs of violence evident. Massey and his colleague, Detective Maples, shared Heather's surname, a coincidence that only added to the nightmare of the crime scene they confronted. As Detective Massey and his team meticulously combed through the apartment, the gravity of the situation weighed heavily on them. Heather's once vibrant presence now lingered as a haunting memory in the very place she called home. The forensic evidence told a chilling tale of brutality and violence, painting a picture of a young life cut short in the most horrific manner imaginable. For Massey and his colleagues, the investigation into Heather's murder became more than just a job. It became a personal mission to bring her justice. Every piece of evidence, no matter how small, was scrutinized with painstaking detail. They interviewed friends, family, and acquaintances, hoping to uncover any clue that could lead them to Heather's killer. Despite their tireless efforts, progress in the case was slow. The lack of a clear motive and the absence of any suspects made the investigation feel like an uphill battle. Yet, Massey refused to give up. He knew that finding Heather's killer was not only a matter of justice, but also a way to bring closure to her loved ones who were left grappling with the incomprehensible loss. Months turned into years, but Massey's determination never wavered. He pored over case files late into the night, searching for any overlooked detail that could break the case wide open. Then finally, a breakthrough came, a small piece of evidence that had gone unnoticed during the initial investigation. Armed with this newfound lead, Massey and his team worked tirelessly to piece together the puzzle of Heather's murder. With each step forward, they felt the weight of responsibility grow heavier, knowing that they were not only seeking justice for Heather, but also seeking to ensure that her killer would never be able to harm another innocent soul. And then, after years of relentless pursuit, the moment they had been waiting for arrived. The pieces of the puzzle fell into place, leading them straight to the doorstep of Heather's killer. As the handcuffs clicked into place, a sense of closure washed over Massey and his team. Heather's memory would live on not only in the hearts of those who loved her, but also in the justice that was served in her name. The case of Linda's murder served as a reminder that even in the face of unspeakable tragedy, there is hope. Hope for justice, hope for closure, and hope that the memory of those we have lost will never fade away. Heather Nicole Maples was born on August 23, 1992, in Ocala, Florida. Her mother affectionately dubbed her a hurricane baby, a moniker well-deserved given Heather's boundless energy and fearless spirit. When her brother Mark was born in 2004 with significant developmental delays, Heather selflessly dedicated herself to his care. Throughout her schooling, she devoted her free time to helping Mark learn to speak, walk, and eat independently, demonstrating unwavering love and commitment. At 22, Heather made the bold decision to leave her Texas home and pursue her dream of becoming a psychologist in Tennessee. Encouraged by a former classmate named Chaz, she ventured to Murfreesboro, drawn to its small college town charm. Soon after her arrival, her relationship with James blossomed into romance, marking the beginning of a new chapter in her life. Supported by her best friend Kelsey, Heather secured a job in the office of the residential complex where they lived, all while preparing for college. Despite initial excitement, her relationship with James eventually faltered, leading to a breakup as he moved away. In August, Heather joyfully shared her acceptance into college with her proud mother. However, a week later, she failed to show up for work, triggering concern and uncertainty among her loved ones. Detectives, recognizing the personal nature of the crime, considered Heather's inner circle as potential suspects. Upon investigating Heather's apartment, they found no signs of forced entry, indicating that the perpetrator likely had familiarity with her. Key pieces of evidence, including unknown DNA and a foreign hair, were discovered and sent for analysis. However, the most significant clue was a distinct bloody fingerprint on Heather's bed. Detective Massey emphasized the precision of the print, suggesting it was not a deliberate act, but rather an inadvertent mark left by the perpetrator. As the investigation progressed, the search for Heather's killer intensified, fueled by a determination to bring justice to a life taken too soon. Every lead, every detail was meticulously scrutinized in pursuit of the truth, as Heather's memory served as a guiding light in the quest for closure. Additionally, Heather's mobile phone was found in the apartment, but accessing its contents proved impossible without the password. This is where Kelsey proved invaluable. Not only did she assist with the phone, but she also made the difficult decision to inform Heather's mother of her tragic passing, believing it would be best received from someone who loved and cared for Heather deeply. Detective Massey pinned his hopes on obtaining crucial information about Heather from her friend Mary. He sought insights into Heather's personal life, particularly her tumultuous relationship with Chaz. Kelsey revealed that the relationship was strained, citing Chaz's evident anger management issues and instances of aggression and cruelty towards Heather. Faced with such treatment, Heather had bravely ended the relationship herself. With this revelation, the police immediately turned their focus to investigating Chaz. However, an unexpected twist unfolded when a young man named Thomas was discovered attempting to access the crime scene despite the caution tape. Astonishingly, he possessed keys to Heather's apartment. Upon questioning, Thomas claimed to have met Heather at a bar. When pressed about their relationship, he adamantly denied any sexual contact with her, insisting they had only met casually. According to Thomas, Heather had invited him for dinner the evening before her death, but he returned home afterward, while Heather went out with friends. However, Thomas's account took a curious turn when he revealed that Heather had later reached out to him for help. It was a puzzling revelation, adding a layer of complexity to an already intricate investigation. As Detective Massey delved deeper into Thomas's account, inconsistencies began to surface, casting doubt on his version of events. Despite his insistence on innocence, his presence at the crime scene with keys to Heather's apartment raised suspicions. The investigation took a pivotal turn when forensic analysis of Heather's phone uncovered a series of text messages exchanged between her and Thomas on the night of her death. These messages painted a different picture from Thomas's initial claims, suggesting a closer relationship between him and Heather than he had admitted. Detective Massey intensified his interrogation of Thomas, pressing him for the truth behind his interactions with Heather. With mounting evidence against him, Thomas's demeanor shifted from confident denial to nervous evasion. Under the weight of scrutiny, Thomas's facade began to crumble, and he eventually confessed to a more intimate relationship with Heather than he had previously disclosed. He admitted to being with her on the night of her death, but maintained his innocence regarding any involvement in her murder. As the investigation progressed, the tangled web of relationships and motives surrounding Heather's death unraveled. Each revelation brought the detectives closer to uncovering the truth behind the tragic events of that fateful night. Meanwhile, Heather's loved ones grappled with the devastating loss of a vibrant young woman whose life was cut short by senseless violence. As the community mourned her untimely passing, they found solace in the tireless efforts of law enforcement to bring her justice. For Detective Massey and his team, the pursuit of truth and justice for Linda became more than just a case. It became a mission to honor her memory and ensure that those responsible for her death faced the consequences of their actions. As the investigation neared its conclusion, the resolve of those seeking justice for Heather remained unwavering, fueled by a determination to bring closure to a grieving community and bring peace to a soul taken too soon. At 11:40 or 11 p.m., Heather called Thomas, urgently requesting his presence at the bar where she found herself in distress. During interrogation, Thomas mentioned that Heather's door should have been unlocked, as he had her keys. He had used them earlier and forgot to return them to her, assuming she wouldn't need them as she was dressed in a dress without pockets. Despite Thomas's cooperative demeanor, investigators proceeded with taking his fingerprints and DNA samples for analysis. Surveillance footage from the bar corroborated Thomas's account of the events. Analysis of the fingerprints and DNA found at the crime scene cleared Thomas of any involvement in Heather's murder. With Thomas ruled out as a suspect, investigators shifted their focus to Sarah, who Heather had messaged prior to her death. Unlocking Heather's phone with Kelsey's assistance revealed messages inviting Sarah to her apartment just hours before her demise. Sarah, described by Heather as a friend, was brought in for questioning. He appeared unaware of Heather's death but became a person of interest in the investigation. During interrogation, Sarah recounted spending time with Heather earlier in the day, corroborating his alibi with photographic evidence. However, his lack of knowledge about Heather's death raised suspicion. Detectives intensified their questioning, suggesting his involvement in Heather's demise. Sarah vehemently denied any wrongdoing, claiming he had not returned to Heather's apartment after parting ways with her earlier. However, Detective Massey's assertive interrogation tactics pushed Sarah to the brink, challenging his innocence in the face of mounting evidence. As the interrogation reached a critical point, Sarah's demeanor shifted from confusion to shock as Detective Massey laid out the damning evidence against him. The revelation of DNA evidence linking him to the crime sent shockwaves through the interrogation room, leaving Sarah reeling from the implications of his alleged involvement in Heather's murder. As Detective Massey pressed Sarah further, the weight of the evidence against him seemed to dawn on him. Despite his initial denials, the irrefutable proof presented by the detective left little room for doubt. The revelation of DNA evidence linking him to the crime scene shook Sarah to his core, forcing him to confront the grim reality of his situation. With the interrogation reaching a critical juncture, Sarah's composure began to crack under the intense pressure. The once confident facade he had maintained faltered, giving way to a sense of desperation as he grappled with the gravity of the accusations leveled against him. As Detective Massey painted a vivid picture of the damning evidence against him, Sarah found himself cornered, his protestations of innocence ringing hollow in the face of overwhelming proof. Each piece of evidence presented by the detective served to further undermine Sarah's credibility, pushing him closer to a breaking point. In a last-ditch effort to salvage his innocence, Sarah offered feeble explanations and excuses, desperately clinging to the hope of exonerating himself from suspicion. However, his attempts to deflect blame fell on deaf ears as Detective Massey remained steadfast in his pursuit of the truth. As the interrogation wore on, the tension in the room reached a fever pitch, with each passing moment bringing Sarah closer to a reckoning he could not escape. With nowhere left to turn, he found himself confronting the stark reality of his situation, the weight of his actions bearing down on him with crushing force. In the end, it was the relentless pursuit of justice by Detective Massey and his team that ultimately brought the truth to light. Through their unwavering determination and dedication to their duty, they succeeded in unraveling the tangled web of deception surrounding Heather's murder, ensuring that those responsible would be held to account for their heinous crimes. As Sarah sat in stunned silence, grappling with the enormity of his actions, the full extent of the tragedy that had befallen Linda and those who loved her became painfully clear. In the face of unspeakable loss, justice had prevailed, offering a glimmer of solace amidst the darkness that had descended upon them. Following the interrogation, Brandon willingly agreed to undergo a DNA test, confident it would vindicate him. As expected, the results showed no match between his DNA and that found at the crime scene, leading to his exclusion as a suspect. Despite this setback, detectives continued their relentless pursuit of leads, working tirelessly to uncover the truth behind Heather's murder. Their efforts intensified as they reviewed surveillance footage and meticulously analyzed witness statements. On the ninth day of the investigation, Detective Massey received a pivotal call from the forensic laboratory director regarding the bloody fingerprint lifted from Heather's bed. It belonged to a young man named Paul, whose fingerprints were on file due to his past employment. Approaching Brandon's interrogation cautiously, Detective Massey sought to give him an opportunity to explain his involvement. Brandon admitted to having been to Heather's apartment multiple times, often finding the door unlocked. However, he vehemently denied any sexual intimacy with her and claimed ignorance about the events leading to her death. Detectives confronted Brandon with the evidence, emphasizing the gravity of the situation and the implications of his actions. Despite their efforts to coax a confession, Brandon maintained his innocence, insisting he had no involvement in Heather's demise. In a last-ditch attempt to clear his name, Brandon submitted to a DNA test at the detective's request. However, rather than awaiting the results, investigators pursued additional avenues of inquiry, recognizing the urgency of the situation. They swiftly petitioned the court for permission to access Brandon's phone, believing it held crucial evidence that could further the investigation. With the match of the fingerprint providing substantial grounds for the next step, detectives were determined to leave no stone unturned in their quest for justice. As Brandon awaited the outcome of the DNA test, the investigation entered a critical phase, with the detectives inching closer to uncovering the truth behind Heather's tragic death. With each new development, the intricate puzzle surrounding the case began to unravel, bringing them one step closer to bringing closure to Heather's loved ones and ensuring that those responsible were held accountable for their actions. As the investigation delved deeper into Brandon's possible involvement, detectives painstakingly combed through his phone records and digital footprint for any clues that could shed light on Heather's murder. Every text message, call log, and social media interaction was scrutinized with meticulous detail, as detectives sought to unravel the events leading up to that fateful night. Their efforts soon bore fruit when they unearthed a series of disturbing exchanges between Brandon and Heather in the days preceding her death. The messages hinted at a tumultuous relationship fraught with tension and volatility, painting a picture of a troubled dynamic between the two individuals. Detectives also discovered that Brandon had been in close proximity to Heather's apartment on the night of her murder, contradicting his earlier claims of innocence. With mounting evidence pointing towards his involvement, detectives confronted Brandon once again, this time armed with damning proof of his guilt. Faced with the overwhelming weight of the evidence against him, Brandon's facade of denial began to crumble, giving way to a sense of resignation and defeat. In a dramatic turn of events, he finally confessed to his role in Heather's murder, providing detectives with a chilling account of the events that transpired that night. According to Brandon's confession, he had gone to Heather's apartment with the intention of confronting her about their strained relationship. However, an argument had quickly escalated into a violent altercation, culminating in a moment of rage during which he had lashed out at Heather, resulting in her tragic death. As Brandon's confession sent shockwaves through the investigative team, detectives worked tirelessly to corroborate his account and piece together the final moments of Heather's life. Their efforts ultimately led to the recovery of crucial forensic evidence that confirmed Brandon's involvement in the crime beyond a shadow of a doubt. With Brandon's confession and the corroborating evidence in hand, detectives swiftly moved to arrest him and bring him to justice for his heinous actions. As he was led away in handcuffs, the sense of closure and relief that washed over Heather's loved ones was palpable, knowing that her killer had finally been apprehended and would face the full consequences of his deeds. In the aftermath of Brandon's arrest, the community came together to mourn the loss of Heather and to honor her memory. While the pain of her untimely death would never fully fade, there was solace in knowing that justice had been served and that Heather could finally rest in peace. Brandon's phone became a crucial piece of evidence in the investigation, and detectives meticulously tracked his movements, calls, and texts on the night of the crime. However, they were unprepared for the horrifying discoveries they made when they gained court approval to access his phone. The video footage retrieved from Paul's phone was nothing short of shocking, even to seasoned detectives. It captured the chilling scene of Heather's room, showcasing Brandon's despicable actions in detail. From intimate moments to brutal beatings, the footage depicted Heather's harrowing ordeal while she was still alive. In February 2018, Kevin pleaded guilty to the attack on Linda. He was subsequently sentenced to 40 years in prison without the possibility of parole. The verdict brought a sense of closure to Heather's loved ones, but it also raised questions about Brandon's motives and the senseless violence he inflicted upon her. On the day of the verdict, Heather's mother, Jennifer, delivered a surprising speech that resonated deeply with many. She expressed forgiveness towards Paul for his role in her daughter's death, emphasizing the power of faith and the importance of letting go of anger and bitterness. In a poignant moment of compassion, Jennifer approached Brandon's mother in the corridor, offering her a hug and acknowledging their shared loss. It was a remarkable display of empathy and forgiveness in the face of unimaginable tragedy. Despite the resolution of the trial, Paul never offered an explanation for his motives. The question of why he committed such a heinous act remains unanswered, leaving many to speculate about the darkness that drove him to inflict such pain and suffering. In contemplating Brandon's motives, it's difficult to comprehend the depths of his depravity and the senselessness of his actions. Perhaps it was a combination of factors, including anger, jealousy, and a distorted sense of power and control. Ultimately, only Brandon himself knows the true motivations behind his unfathomable crime, and his silence leaves his motives shrouded in mystery.